The probability of this happening by chance is very, very small. So that means it probably didn't happen by chance. It happened for some other reason. Now, one explanation, of course, is cheating, but people may come up with other explanations.
Dr. Jax Reeves is a professor of statistics at the University of Georgia. He's also director of the university's Consulting Center, which conducted the statistical research in the Atlanta cheating scandal and the 2012 cheating investigation in Mobile County that led to the discipline of 3 employees at Scarborough Middle School. We hired Reeves and his team to analyze the results for the Alabama Reading and Mathematics Test, or ARMT, for all elementary schools in Mobile and Baldwin counties. The data comes from the Alabama Department of Education website under the Accountability Reporting System. We were interested in the 3 school years leading up to 2013, when former J.E. Turner principal Missy Nolan said she first reported cheating and other ethics concerns to local school administrators.
And I began to uncover that within the first month that I was at J.E. Turner, and I received the state assessment results back. Mainly looking in the area of special education, where I could basically there were some red flags.
But from the beginning, Mobile County School Superintendent Martha Peak said Nolan's complaint did not focus on standardized tests.
What we looked at in this, and there were more general allegations as far as grading irregularities and that type of thing. And so what we did was address those.
In the first 2, you talked a little bit about the data and how you... However, our statistician, Dr. Reeves, did find some irregularities in the data from the standardized test percentages, particularly during the period when Nolan was principal.
Well, there was one school in particular, which was J.E. Turner Elementary, which had been mentioned before as one where perhaps there were problems. And yes, that school stood out like a sore thumb.
This report gives you an idea of what the statisticians picked up. It's something we noticed too. The State Department website breaks down the data into categories so that you can easily see how one group of students compares to another. For example, when comparing 5th grade reading percentages for special ed students and regular students at Turner during the 2012-2013 school year, there are an unusually high percentage of special ed students scoring in the top 2 achievement levels.
The special ed students are really doing well, almost as well as the regular students, and better than the regular students in half the schools in Mobile, Baldwin area. It appeared, one might think, that the teachers or something was happening. The special ed students were doing really well. They were doing almost as well as the regular students. And this generally doesn't happen.
The percentages for regular students at the school also showed some abnormalities. Dr. Reeves says nationwide, the free and reduced lunch program factors into overall test scores.
The higher the proportion of students who have free and reduced lunch, the lower the scores are.
But that's not what the data reveals at Turner.
And when we did that and made some predictions, yes, J.E. Turner, once again, especially for reading scores for all students or just regular students, was much higher than you expect. It was, pretty surprising.
But not so surprising to Nolan, who filed the original complaint.
It doesn't surprise me at all, because that's exactly what I began to see when I began to analyze and disaggregate that data when we first received it from the State Department. I began to see those red flags.
We were the first to tell you about the state investigation into allegations from a former principal at J.E. Turner Elementary. That was 5 months ago, and we haven't just been waiting for a response from state or local officials on their findings. We started digging for information from the start, and we discovered the biggest surprise on the State Department of Education's own website. Tonight, I'll walk you through our investigative process. It was a single email to State Superintendent Dr. Thomas Bice that alerted our investigative team about allegations of cheating and misconduct at J.E. Turner Elementary. First, we went to Montgomery to confirm the investigation.
We gave it to our legal staff to continue their investigation.
And a few months later, Mobile County School Superintendent Martha Peak told us the investigation focused primarily on grading irregularities that resulted in retraining for some teachers.
There wasn't anything there that really indicated any malice or ill intent on the system's part or anyone's part for there to be an issue.
There were ethics violations that were intentional, and the evidence shows that.
Neither state nor local officials would talk about the specific allegations, so we sent out numerous requests under the Freedom of Information Act and turned to other sources to uncover documents, emails, and audio recordings from the state investigation. But one of our most surprising discoveries turned up on the State Department of Education's own website. That's where we noticed the test percentages for special education students at J.E. Turner appeared to be much higher than other schools in the area. So we hired the statisticians at the University of Georgia to analyze the data. Our investigative team spent hours recording the percentage scores for every elementary school in Mobile and Baldwin counties over a 3-year period. We needed to know the percentage of students who scored in the categories 1 through 4, 4 being the highest achievement level, which signifies the students scored above expectation.
What we were really looking at, of course, was we wanted to see the distribution of students' scores to see if, some school looked a lot different than the others.
Dr. Jax Reeves is a professor of statistics and the director of the Consulting Center at the university. His team also noticed the percentages for the special education students at Turner were not consistent with most other schools in Mobile County. In his final report, Dr. Reeves refers to the evidence against J.E. Turner as overwhelming. One chart from the report compares special education students and general students. It shows the gap in achievement between special ed, whose scores are represented by the circles on the left, and general students whose scores are on the right. But in this chart, the special ed students at one school are achieving above nearly half the general education students in both Mobile and Baldwin counties.
It appeared, one might think, that the teachers or something was happening. The special ed students were doing really well. They were doing almost as well as the regular students. And this generally doesn't happen.
Dr. Reeves also discovered discrepancies with percentages for regular students at Turner.
Something weird happened. I just can't believe the students would have done that well. It's just the other schools aren't doing anything like that.
In addition to collecting percentages in the 4 achievement levels, our team also included figures from 2 other categories: free lunch and reduced lunch. Dr. Reeves says nationwide there's usually a direct correlation between the numbers in this column and the scores recorded here.
The higher the proportion of students who have free and reduced lunch, the lower the scores are.
Last night, I mentioned changes on the State Department of Education's website. Today, I contacted the department about those changes. An email from Communications Director Michael Sibley confirmed there have been several changes to the layout over the past few months. Sibley said the goal is to make the site more user-friendly and provide as much information as possible. The data we used is still there, it's just in a different location on the site. But a new Excel spreadsheet doesn't contain any percentages above 95%, and I couldn't find any Excel spreadsheets for ARM scores prior to the 2012-2013 school year. The omission of that information might make it more difficult for anyone interested in analyzing the data in the future. We hired a group of experts from the University of Georgia to analyze standardized test scores from all of the elementary schools in Mobile and Baldwin counties. The data came from the Alabama Department of Education's own website, and all of the schools were analyzed using the same statistical standards. I talked with Mobile County Public School Superintendent Martha Peak about some of the unusual findings that turned up in the statistician's report.
He's not from Alabama and hasn't been involved in the process here. He's in Georgia, which is a totally different system.
Mobile County School Superintendent Martha Peak says the report from statisticians with the University of Georgia that reveals inconsistencies in some standardized test scores in the county is just one opinion.
We've done extensive reviews of data, of situations that have been reported to us, and we've not found any evidence
of there being any issues.
Well, there was one school in particular, which was J.E. Turner Elementary, which had been mentioned before as one where perhaps there were problems. And yes, that school stood out like a sore thumb.
Dr. Jax Reeves is a professor of statistics and the director of the Consulting Center at the University of Georgia. He says Turner stood out drastically when analyzed by the same standards as all other schools in Mobile and Baldwin counties. The 19-page report from Dr. Reeves and his staff makes several mathematical projections based on what researchers know about the relationship between some socioeconomic factors and the expected gap in scores between special ed students and regular students. In the report, Dr. Reeves points out that a very small achievement gap between the two groups could be an indication of cheating. One chart from his report shows the special ed scores represented by circles on the bottom left, the general student scores toward the top right of the chart. But the special education students at one school, J.E. Turner, performed better than half the general students in both counties. That chart did grab the attention of school officials. Peak says the system's research division hasn't come up with an answer.
I wasn't aware, particularly at Turner. I am now, and we've gone back and looked at it. It was a very small sampling of students there, so our research and development office certainly will continue to pursue that. The problem is when we go back and look at past, those students are now well into middle school, so we'll have to, look at those students as they've progressed, and we'll continue to do that.
In the report, Dr. Reeves refers to the evidence concerning Turner as overwhelming.
I would think if these are pointed out to someone, that someone would say, hey, what is going on?
Former Principal Missy Nolan did report allegations of cheating at J.E. Turner to the state. Her accusations led to a state investigation.
And I began to uncover that within the first month that I was at J.E. Turner, and I received the state assessment results back. Mainly looking in the area of special education, where I could, basically there were some red flags.
Any of the complaints that Mrs. Nolan brought forward, we looked at all of them. There were a number of complaints, and we looked at each specific area that there was a complaint issued on. The one thing that's difficult about the complaint about the ARMT was that Mrs. Nolan was not principal of the school at that time. She was looking at data from the previous year.
Nolan says she noticed a discrepancy in the test scores from the prior year and the students' current classroom work.
Their ability level didn't match the score that they had received on the ARMT assessment.
What that means is
Peak says the investigation into the allegations at Turner are still ongoing. She says the UGA report is not the definitive answer.
So we have to be very careful about it, and I think very careful about interpretations. From state to state, there are different standards and different measures of progress. So I don't know how much he actually understood about the ARMT or the length of time that we had been given it. So that was his perception, but he hadn't been here in the trenches working with us on it.
Peak says the school system's researchers are taking a close look at the report and studying it very carefully. I invite you to take a look at it too. It's posted on our website. I'll share some new information from the report tomorrow night as we continue our special investigative series, putting test scores to the test. When we first encountered the standardized test results for J.E. Turner, they appeared a bit odd to us. So our investigative team hired the statisticians at the University of Georgia to help us understand the numbers. We compiled the percentages for all of the elementary schools in Mobile and Baldwin counties. As we've told you, the numbers came from the State Department of Education website. After analyzing the information from all of the elementary schools, the experts say they have suspicions about some other schools.
There do appear at Turner and maybe some other schools, some of just the scores, not just special ed students, even regular students, seem suspiciously high given the characteristics of the school.
University of Georgia statistician Dr. Jax Reeves says the findings are less conclusive for other outlier schools like George Hall Elementary than for J.E. Turner.
Every single one of those falls either outside the bound or very near the bound.
There's no other school that shows up that much like that. So that's very suspicious. And when I heard about that, I thought, hey, that's strange. Is there something special about Hall? Like, is it some school for, advanced students or something?
School Superintendent Martha Peak says there is indeed something special about Hall Elementary, where she says focused academic standards and intense student intervention have resulted in consistently high standardized test scores not seen at any of the other schools.
Using Hall as an example, all of those elements are in place at a very professional level for the students to succeed, and they do.
George Hall has gone from one of the lowest performing schools more than a decade ago to a torchbearer school for achievement in recent years. Just this month, Hall was named one of the top 50 public elementary schools in the country by the educational website, thebestschools.org. Peak says school administrators are confident Hall's high scores were achieved honestly.
You know, all along the way we've had end of quarter tests, EQTs. Those are monitored. Also, we have teams of people who are in all of our schools actually observing and seeing the teaching and learning that's taking place there. We also know all the programs and materials that are being used to provide support in that school. So it's not just test scores that we monitor.
There are no allegations of cheating against Hall or any of the other schools that reflected unusually high test scores except J.E. Turner. And Peak has no explanation for Turner's abnormal scores.
And we've gone back and looked at it.
Last year, the state switched to a new standardized test.
The ARMT served its purpose at the time, but now we've moved on to the ACT Aspire. That corresponds to the Alabama College and Career Readiness Standards, much more rigorous standards.
In addition to being a tougher test, Peak says Mobile County has taken steps to make it more secure.
We're the only district in the state of Alabama that's giving all of the tests online. 30,000 tests were given online last year. We'll continue to do that. And that's immediate response. And it's not that anybody intentionally cheats, but it's immediate response to guarantee that that won't be any question about those answers being submitted.
Peak says the school system will begin this year's standardized testing in April using the new ACT Aspire. She has invited us to look in on the testing process. While Ms. Peak says the school system's investigation into the allegations at Turner is ongoing, we have yet to hear back from the State Department of Education.